Before this video begins, I would like to give a quick thank you to my Asban Team level patrons Fallon Cortez and Nathan Gibson. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Hello everyone and welcome back to another Doctor Who lore video. When it comes to Series 1, probably the most iconic new monsters are the Slitheen, as introduced in Aliens of London and World War III. Now rather interestingly, the Slitheen aren't actually an alien race. They're just one singular family of Raxacoricofallapatorians, which have a lot of cool lore behind them both in the show and expanded media. So that's why today's lore video is going to be a bit of a deep dive into the Slitheen and their wider species. Naturally, beware spoilers for the following stories, and strap yourselves in, because this is everything you need to know about the Slitheen and Raxacoricofallapatorius. And yes, get ready to hear a lot of incomprehensible made up alien words. You know how it is with sci-fi. I think the best place to start is with the Slitheen's home planet of Raxacoricofallapatorius in either Mutter's Spiral or the Istop Galaxy. It's important to note that this planet was part of what's known as the Raxus Alliance, which also contained the planets of Clom, Clix, and Raxacoricofallapatorius. Clom was the twin planet of Raxacoricofallapatorius, although there was kind of a rivalry between the two native species, as implied by the Absorbaloth in Love and Monsters. We don't know a huge amount about Clom as a planet apart from it being taken to the Medusa Cascade by the Daleks, although a popular delicacy there was the dish of land prawns. That being said, apparently tomato soup and shepherd's pie were better, so it can't be that good then. According to The Girl Who Waited, Clom also had a Disneyland at some point in the future, probably opened by Walt himself after he woke up from being cryogenically frozen. And yes, it is actually canon that Walt Disney was cryogenically frozen. The native species of Clom were the Absorbalovians, although I'll get to them properly once I reach Love and Monsters. There isn't much knowledge about Raxacoricofallapatorius, and all we know about Clix is the native species being named Clixians, who could manipulate and control the weather of their planet. These were tall and muscular carbon-based humanoids with claws and beaks, along with pale yellow skin and black manes. Clixians were control freaks and skilled hunters who rode the reptilian Clixian spinebacks to participate in the Grand Raxian Hunt, a traditional event the Raxus Alliance all took part in. By most accounts, Raxacoricofallapatorius was actually a very beautiful planet, with the visual dictionary describing it as lush and abundant, along with a Slitheen monster file claiming the purple atmosphere could be seen from space. The Time Traveller's Almanac reveals that its four poles are marked by spectacular ice caves, and sapphire and chalk cliffs meet huge burgundy oceans. The Sarah Jane Adventures Flash game plant and animal habitats also adds that the planet had a vinegar sea, an ice floe, and a tall tree forest. The planet only had one major continental landmass, which is Raxus Prime, with the rest of the surface being island groups such as the islands of Hisp. The Raxacoricofallapatorians were able to swim between these islands using their powerful arms, and were able to see through blizzards with their large eyes, so they're very well adapted for life on the planet. The Time Traveller's Almanac also explains that the planet is known for the scent of cinnamon in the air, along with white popito trees, although other sources claim these have a golden trunk and reddish-brown leaves. The popito trees lived in the tall tree forests, and their calcium roots thrived in chalky soil. We also know about the plant rackweed, which was a very adaptable and fast-growing weed capable of growing anywhere, and its spores could infect other life forms and kill them quickly. Despite this, rackweed was edible and even addictive to some Raxacoricofallapatorians, such as the Slitheen blatherine as we see in The Gift, along with the use of specific sound frequencies to destroy the plants and heal anyone who had been infected by them. In terms of the fauna of Raxacoricofallapatorius, we only know of venom grubs and the Barodelskelium fatricius beast, which were giant squirrel-like animals who lived in the tall tree forests and chalky hills, specifically known for their pustules, with the Slitheen excursion introducing the phrase, "A Barodelskelium fatricius can't change its pustules." However, these creatures were hunted to extinction by the Raxacoricofallapatorians. Indeed, let's finally get to those iconic calcium-based creatures themselves. They were hatched from large tendrilled eggs in the family hatcheries, and were still considered children at the age of 12, being shorter than human children, although the adults would eventually tower over human adults and sleep in nests. Almost as soon as they're hatched, Raxacoricofallapatorians begin to educate their young in things like poetry, maths and democracy, along with disciplining them by spanking the children with Bartle-Boigle trees. On the whole, Raxacoricofallapatorians were actually quite a peaceful race, focusing on farming and making their homeworld into a paradise for them to thrive. According to the Time Traveller's Almanac, the planet's main form of contact with other worlds comes through trade in the planet's valuable spice offich. The planet itself was ruled by the Lord Predator, who governed the Grand Council, along with there being an assembly. However, despite monsters and villains describing this peaceful democratic species as civilized, elegant and proud, the political and legal system was strict with harsh penalties for offenders, specifically the death penalty for the most dangerous criminals. Indeed, the death sentence on Raxacoricophalopatorius was like a ritual, taking place in the Palace of Enforced Atonement, the planet's largest temple. The Raxacoricophalopatorians had these kinds of huge white marble temples built all across their world on cliff tops, but this was the largest and most significant. Monsters and Villains describes the process as follows. There, a thin solution of acetic acid would be prepared, watched by thousands of spectators in the open-air amphitheatre, all chanting the dawn prayer, "O deliver us weeping and shamed." The Slitheen would be lowered into the cauldron slowly and boiled. This acetic acid solution would be prepared in a way that only the outer skin dissolves and is eaten away, leaving the internal organs to dissolve into the boiling liquid and become soup, which is then drunk by the presiding officials and priests. Peaceful way to go then, especially when you consider that Monsters and Villains states that the prisoner remains alive for 15 to 20 seconds after they become soup, with the book literally referring to it as living soup. How delightful. According to the Visual Dictionary, Raxacoricophalopatorian society is organised entirely around its powerful families. The most important of these families was the legendary Huspic Degenerate, who controlled an illegal spice smuggling organisation and were essentially the origin of all major Raxacoricophalopatorian families. These families included the Kazine, Lilene, Pitterine, Glizine, and Hostrozine, although these are the ones we know the least about. There was also the Changline family, who were some of the earliest descendants of the Huspic Degenerate and themselves served as ancestors to the Hanazine and Slaverine families. The Chippine and Fitterine families interbred to create the Absorbalorvian rebels, who were a family from Clom sharing ancestry from both Raxacoricophalopatorians and Absorbalovians. Similarly, the Clom colonists had a colony on Clom and eventually led to the Rakatine family, who enjoyed food from other planets and kept their past criminal dealings secret because they didn't want to be exiled and hunted down. There was also the Hanazine Blatherine family, who were orange and profited off the violent strip mining of the planet Luxonia, but we don't know much else about them. But the families don't end there, with the Arlene, Jingathene and the Hazratine, the latter being a maroon-skinned, peaceful and law-abiding race with great digestive systems allowing them to enjoy the richest foods. In the audio The Taste of Death, the Hazratine met the 10th Doctor and Rose, helping to apprehend the villainous Slitheen on the planet MXQ-1. And lastly, for the more obscure Raxacoricophalopatorian families, we have the Plom family, who are notable for being the ancestors of the Blatherine family. The grey-green Blatherine were very similar to their Slitheen cousins, although they were in constant competition with them. The Blatherine were originally peaceful and law-abiding, one of the most respected major families on the planet, with their willingness to do good and hunt down Slitheen criminals out of duty rather than for financial gain. However, by 2501, they had slipped into becoming a criminal family themselves, being controlled by their patriarch Don Arco and attempting to take control of the planet Justicia and move the entire system into others to destroy the planets with a sun flamethrower and selling the remains as nuclear fuel. However, they were stopped by the Slitheen and the 9th Doctor, who were forced to reluctantly work together. Also at some point, the Slitheen and Blatherine interbred, giving rise to the reddish-brown Slitheen Blatherine, who considered their Slitheen relatives worse, but their Blatherine relatives weak and unworthy of respect. These Raxacoricophalopatorians had very advanced technology and could remotely teleport along with using bracelets to fire lasers and hack into computers. As we see in the Sarah Jane Adventures, Tree Lawn Acre Slitheen Blatherine and Leaf Apple Glyn Slitheen Blatherine based themselves in Antarctica and hatched a scheme to cover Earth with the rackweed they were addicted to, although they were soon stopped by the Bannerman Road Gang and did an Evangelion. And of course, we have the Slitheen themselves, one of the oldest families who were born on the islands of Hisp and ultimately became the most infamous Raxacoricophalopatorians in the entire universe. The Slitheen were natural-born hunters, with their newly hatched Slitheen being hatched alone in deep underground caves, having to burrow their way out to survive and find food and sunlight, a ritual that forced only the strongest to survive. Oh, and apparently the Slitheen also engaged in cannibalism, which, you know, is always fun. As stated in Monsters and Villains, over the course of many centuries, the Slitheen established themselves as a criminal clan, infiltrating all levels of government to control distribution of offich. However, after crashing the planet's economy, they were exposed, shamed and arrested in the Great Purge of Yon 556, with more than 550 Slitheen tried and found guilty, although a large number of them were able to escape their death sentences, forcing them on the run from the Wrath Warriors, Blathereen and the Jadoon. The most notable family branch was the Pasamir Day Slitheen, who travelled to Earth in 2006 to take control of the UK government and launch a false flag attack on the planet in order to manipulate the humans into nuking Earth into oblivion, with the Slitheen ready to sell off its remains as starship fuel. However, they were stopped by the Doctor and almost wiped out entirely, even when Blondfell Foch was able to escape and try once again as Mayor of Cardiff, with the survivor ultimately reverted to an egg and taken back to her home planet for a second chance at life. However, it's important to note that there are a few different branches of the Slitheen family operating in their own ways, such as the Clatch Par Slitheen, who we don't know much about, and the Clep Cloth Slitheen from Death on a Mile, who wanted to steal George II's war chest from Edinburgh Castle in order to pay their debts. There was also the Lutevan Day branch, who wanted revenge for the defeat of the Pasamir Day branch, so they took over a building company named Coldfire Construction and tried to shut down the sun to destroy the Earth and sell its remnants to buy a fleet of battlecruisers to overthrow their homeworld's Grand Council. Sarah Jane and Luke Smith were able to defeat Kistmag Thek Lutevan Day Slitheen and his cousins, Gloon Fex Fizz Charlevere Slam Slitheen and Florm Rex Fey Fenaril Slam Slitheen. However, Course Lutevan Day Slitheen survived, returning later to team up with Blorm Vunga Bart Slitheen and her husband Dax Fex Fies Slitheen to get revenge on Sarah Jane and Luke and crash the moon into Earth, although they were double-crossed by the secretly evil Mr. Smith and left Earth in peace. There were also the Heppen Bear Slitheen, who became embroiled in the Justicia scheme and ultimately stole the warp hole technology to try and rebuild the family's fortune. The Slitheen excursion introduced the family Hangul Wang in the 347th century, when the Slitheen were still exiled from their home planet. The Hangul Wang branch took part in the Platonic War and were defeated by humans, so sought revenge by manipulating Earth's history and turning the planet into a temporal tourist tour for lots and lots of money. However, the 10th Doctor was able to stop them, with Mamps, Cosmo and Leap Slitheen being arrested for their scheme. The Slitheen would continue to plot against Earth and the Doctor throughout time, even appearing at Stonehenge and Trenzalore during the 11th Doctor's life, along with also invading the planet Tivoli in 2311, taking over from the Stenza and ruling the planet for over a century before they were arrested by the Jadoon in 2426. However, their most audacious scheme came in 3764. You see, when the Slitheen took control of Raxacoricofallapatorius all those years earlier, the Raxus Alliance descended into chaos, with a peace conference on Clix in 3764 seeing a last-ditch attempt to restore peace and prosperity. Senior envy of Raxacoricofallapatorius, Galida Lay Sooth Marca Jinglathene, enlisted the 9th Doctor to serve as a keynote speaker and help broker a peace. However, by this point, the Slitheen had developed much more advanced compression technology for their disguises, allowing for them to effortlessly hide within bodies of all shapes and sizes. It turned out that this 9th Doctor was himself a female Slitheen in disguise. This ultimately led to a Grand Raxian hunt, which killed a bunch of Raxacoricofallapatorians due to acid rain. This was all because Glader was actually trying to manufacture sympathy for the Raxacoricofallapatorians to give them control of the Alliance once more, but then she was arrested, although by that point the whole boiled in acid punishment wasn't really a thing anymore. Bit of a shame. So that's it for the brief history of the Raxacoricofallapatorians, the calcium-based aliens who were impervious to bullets, capable of rapid speeds, and had brutally effective claws able to behead even weeping angels. They also had an incredible sense of smell, allowing them to hunt, and the women of the species were even able to shoot poison out of their claws or their breath. Once you get past the farting of their compression skin suits, the Raxacoricofallapatorians are such an interesting species to learn about. Expanded media has fleshed them out so well by introducing all these background details and interesting facts like their efficient metabolism, their calcification on ice planets, and the concept of them losing moisture as they age, effectively turning them into stone. It's a hugely varied species full of all of these very different families, each with their own unique ways of life. Their home planet is absolutely fascinating, and I'd love to see it appear on screen properly in some form or another. I'm so glad the Raxacoricofallapatorians weren't dropped as recurring aliens after the negative reception of the Slitheen, because there's so much to explore there. So that's it for this deep dive into the Raxacoricofallapatorian species. I hope you enjoyed this video and at least learned something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And I'd just like to thank my Asbantium level patrons, Fallon Cortez and Nathan Gibson, my Diamond level patrons, Glenna Clark and Valter, my Platinum level patrons, Maximilian Foreman and Nix Games, and all my Gold level patrons, Boots, Daniel Shillito, Franz Horn aka Line Vortex, Robert Hock, and Tom Azar. Thank you so much for your support.